Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. Well, it's time for another Tools and Tech Tuesday, and today, well, I had a whole different video planned out, but, well, as it turns out, Neuralink decided to have a press conference slash demo day. And I know several people who I think would find this really interesting, so I thought, why not go through? Let's talk about what is it and why you should care. Okay, in case you're not familiar, Neuralink is another one of the companies created by Elon Musk. He's always been kind of afraid of like a Terminator or Skynet type scenario, all this doom and gloom about artificial intelligence. But there's some other benefits to go along with Neuralink, and I thought those were some of the most interesting things, the things that the employees were really excited about. So first of all, they started out talking about where the device started and where it is now and where they expect to get in the future. So Elon starts talking about what's sort of the state of the art and what's really available to consumers right now. And what's really available to consumers right now is about something that has essentially like 10 wires. It's much more intrusive. You'd have this big box sticking out of your head, and it's just not that practical. So then Elon goes into talking about where Neuralink started and kind of where it's at now. And Neuralink started with a unit that was kind of large and was behind the person's ear. And when I was young, I remember there was a kid in school that had a hearing aid that was rather large and went behind his ear. And now we're to the point where the entire hearing aid can go inside the person's ear. And they want to get to the point, in fact they are to the point now, that they have something that would go inside the head and it would be wirelessly charged, and it's something the size of a large coin, and it would just replace a piece of the person's skull, and you would never even notice that the person had the implant. Elon likens this thing to a Fitbit with wires that go into your brain, because it's going to wirelessly charge and it's going to use something similar to Bluetooth LE to communicate with your phone. As I mentioned, this thing will be wirelessly charged. Specifically, it's going to be inductive charging, which is the technology that a lot of new cell phones use and things like the Apple Watch. Because your brain has so many tiny little veins and arteries, this thing is going to have to be robotically implanted because it's going to take such precision. Right now, this is the robot that they're using. Elon mentioned that this procedure is going to be able to be done without general anesthesia, which means that you're going to literally be able to walk into the hospital in the morning, get the implant, and then walk out later on that afternoon. He also said that since it's so fine and precise and avoids all those little blood vessels that you have in your brain, that there's actually no bleeding. Elon had a demo he liked to call the 3 little pigs. The first pig, he said, had no implant. It was just a normal, happy pig. The second pig had an implant, but it was later removed. And then finally, the third pig still had the implant. One of the points behind this demo was to show the reversibility. He said that you'd be able to get it done, and then later, if you chose, you could have it removed, and you never know that it was there, except for a little scar underneath your hair. That second pig that had the implant, as an audience, you really couldn't tell that it ever had the implant, and the pig seemed very happy and normal. That third pig that still had the implant, they had it connected to the neurons that connect to the pig's snout. And every time it kind of sniffed around and put its nose up against the ground and things like that, you would hear a bunch of beeps and it would show it on a graph. Elon also mentioned that they've been successful at putting in more than one implant into a pig. So Elon also showed us a graph of another pig that had an implant in the motor cortex, which is the part of the brain that controls the movement of the body. And he was showing how they could have the pig on a treadmill and they could predict where each limb would be just on the feedback from those neurons. Someone asked about price, and Elon said that it would probably be higher, but it would drop over time, and they would like to get it down to a few $1,000s, comparable to something like LASIK surgery. So one of the things that I found the most interesting about this whole event was just the variety of uses for this. Elon had several employees there with him, and they went down the line, and each employee gave what they were most excited about, what they were the most passionate about with the potential uses for this. I thought we'd go down the line and I'd give you a quick synopsis of what each person said. Dan said that he was most interested in restoring vision for the blind. The second person said that telepathy was important to them. Now you can imagine if I were to show you a picture, you can instantly see everything that's in this picture. But if I was going to describe everything in it, the colors, the shapes, everything in it, so you could recreate the picture, it would take much longer than just showing you the picture. So his thought was that condensing all of our thoughts into words takes a lot of energy and is kind of inefficient. So the idea would be that we could directly convey images and other thoughts directly to other people without having to put them into words. The third person said that they are most excited about learning about the brain and neurological diseases. The next person talked about unleashing creativity, how many of us could probably picture something really neat, some really awesome painting in our head, but we don't have the skills to actually do the painting, or we might have an awesome song in our head, but we don't know how to write music. And so being able to directly put that into a computer and have a computer actually make the painting or make the song for us, that'd be pretty neat. The next person said that they are excited about getting it less like tech and more like biology. He said he'd like to get it to the point where a person's brain doesn't know if it's being stimulated from the inside or from the outside. The next person said that they thought it was really cool how they were able to record on multiple channels simultaneously. The next person said that they liked the idea of solving anxiety and depression. The next person said they'd like to control pain and disease. As I mentioned earlier, Elon is kind of worried about like a Skynet or Terminator type scenario where AI kind of takes over and the human race is sort of irrelevant, but he wants to achieve, rather than that happening, he wants to achieve like a symbiosis where we sort of use the technology to our advantage. The next person said that they'd like to learn the nature of consciousness. So far we've talked about reversing disease or helping with disease, but the next person said that they would like to learn how to help prevent disease in the first place. The next person said that they were excited about potentially healing a spinal injury. Elon pointed out that if you have a broken spinal cord, it's essentially like broken wires in your back. So he said that it's theoretically possible that you could have an implant on one side of the break and an implant on the other side of the break and sort of bridge that gap wirelessly with the two implants. The next person said she knows a lot of people on the autism spectrum, and she'd like to be able to see them to be able to be helped by this if they so choose. And finally, the next person said that he knows that a lot of people lose memories when they get older, and he said he himself can no longer remember a lot of things that happened when he was young, and he looks forward to being able to save memories electronically so then he could go later and sort of replay them for himself. Here's a picture of the device. I believe they said it was 23 by 8 millimeters. I could see a day where we could potentially be able to download knowledge. Can you imagine? You want to learn a new language? Just download a file. Want to learn Kung Fu? Just download a file. Be kind of cool. I gotta say, I'm intrigued and I think this is pretty cool, but at the same time, there's something a little unsettling about it. Let me know what you think. Finally, I just want to point out that Elon says that they need more people on their team. He says that you don't necessarily have to have experience with neuroscience. He said, but things like maybe Fitbits or other products, electronic products and things like that, if you have those kind of experiences, he said he'd love to have you put in your resume. So if this is up your alley, you might want to check it out. Well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed that look at the Neuralink event. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. I had a whole different... Okay, wait for the cars without the mufflers. Because it's going to wirelessly charge and essentially communicate to your phone with something very similar to Bluetooth. Elon likens this thing to Fitbit that's in with Now, as I mentioned, this thing is going to be inductively charged, which is the same. As I mentioned, this thing is going to be inductively charged, which is the same technology that you use with inductively charged, which is the technology that many new cell phones use, and things like who wasn't there at the time, but the pig had the implant in the motor cortex.